In landscape photography, patience is key. Some of my favorite photos through the years were the result of finding a good subject, then waiting patiently for just the right conditions. This works incredibly well, just so long as you pick your battles wisely. I'm glad that I found those two great subjects in Death Valley, but the high wind proved very difficult to work with, and there was no change in sight. Rather than being stubborn and digging in, I decided to remain flexible and to move along to a different location. The weather forecast in Zion looked very promising. Relatively warm days combined with freezing overnight temperatures. This would almost certainly lead to the formation of ice along the flowing creeks. Unlike in Death Valley, those same blue skies were a welcome sight. It is a perfect recipe for reflected light.
Well, welcome to a wonderfully chilly, frosty, and snowy Zion National Park. Now, it snowed a couple days ago, so it's not super fresh snow, but some of the areas that really don't catch a lot of sunlight, they still have quite a bit of snow like the areas back behind me. So I'm just taking a moment to kind of wander around, drive around, and get some ideas as far as what it is I'd like to photograph here. I've yet to go to some of the higher elevation areas yet on this trip, just because I figured I'd check out the main canyon here first. But I'm sure they have quite a bit more snow up in the upper areas. But I do have my camera ready to go just in case I do find something. But I do enjoy the process of just wandering around and seeing what I can find. And this sure is a heck of a lot different than the scenery I had yesterday, that's for sure. So when I came here last winter, there was this really cool tree that I photographed. And it's this old dead cottonwood that's kind of fallen on its side. And right now it's looking pretty decent with some snow in the tree, some snow around it. And then the canyon walls in the background have a lot of snow too. So I'm gonna make my way over there, and hopefully I've got enough time to get the camera set up before any sort of direct sunlight spills into the frame. But it would be really nice to get at least one sheet of film exposed today, given that it's my first day here in Zion. Sure is beautiful here. So this is the scene that I photographed last year when there was no snow, and definitely looks a little bit different with snow, especially with all the snow kind of on that back wall there. And it's kind of a tricky exposure because the snow is fairly bright. Some of the parts of that background wall are quite dark, so it's really pushing the limits of Velvia. But I did expose actually 3 sheets of Velvia because I got into this sort of tricky zone where my shutter speeds were kind of, basically on large format lenses, you have full stop increments for your shutter speeds when they're timed by the camera. But then when you're in bulb mode, you can time it however you want. But it put me in a situation where I was at 0.8 seconds at f45. And if I go to 1 second, it put me at f51, which I really didn't want to go to. But I did an exposure that way. But then I dropped in a 2-stop ND filter. And I also dropped in a 4-stop ND filter for, 2 additional photos. And the reason I did both the 2 and then I did another photo with a 4 is because I don't think the 2 is a very neutral filter. So this will be kind of a test to see how well that does. But it feels pretty good to get some film exposed here. I did use my normal lens there. No camera movements or anything like that. It's a pretty straightforward photo. Just framing up that tree back there with a nice wall back behind it, all that snow back there. Feels good to expose some film here, but now I need to get the camera packed up and see if I can find anything else. now early afternoon, and I was wandering around for quite a while, and I found a kind of interesting scene here. So down at the bottom of this creek bed here, all these sort of round river rocks, they're all placed at very specific angles because of the flow of water in the past. And then there's snow over the top of them. It's starting to kind of melt away a little bit. And it creates some really interesting patterns when viewed from a very particular angle, kind of V-shaped patterns. It kind of reminds me a little bit of migratory birds. So I set up my camera and exposed a sheet of Velvia as well as a sheet of Ektar. And I used some front tilt there, which basically allows me to have that plane of focus follow right along the ground there, which is really easy to keep everything nice and sharp and in focus. It was 1 second at f/45, but definitely a pretty cool scene to find. And I think I've shot all the film I have already ready to go, so I'll need to load some more film this evening. But until then, I think I'll just keep wandering around and see if anything else catches my eye.
I enjoyed walking along the river that evening, and I recorded several more narrative video clips along the way. But truth be told, my microphone wasn't working all that well. It might have something to do with the hard hit it took in Death Valley when it was slammed to the ground by high wind. Thankfully, my inexpensive Zeiss lens was able to absorb much of the impact. This, my friends, is why I can't have nice things. I'm glad that I was able to photograph that snow-covered fallen tree. The soft color palette of Kodak Ektar brought out a nuance of warm light on the snow-covered branches, and I like how the cool bluish tones in the background give a sense of depth. To me, this looks very similar to how it did in person. It's good that I photographed this on both Ektar and Velvia, because the exposures on Velvia were a bit of a disaster. You'll see those during the film reveal. I'm still not quite sure what I think about this photo compared to the one I shot last year without the snow. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts in the comments below. The second photo of the snow-covered rocks was very fun to compose, but somehow I managed to grossly underexpose it. And Velvia definitely went quite blue. I thought I had exposed a sheet of Ektar, but I never found that sheet of film. Perhaps it's still loaded in one of my holders, but with the dark slide reversed. You think I would have learned my lesson after my fall trip, but I don't think it's all that strong of a photo anyways. In any case, I was happy to be in Zion. I look forward to finding more subjects in the days to come. If you enjoy this ad-free and clickbait-free content and want to help me live my dream, a voluntary contribution of just $24 a year helps keep my gas tank full and my film freezer stocked. For more information on how to support me and my work, please visit the donation section of my website at benhorn.com/donate. I also have prints and my portfolio box set available on my website. You can find a direct link down below in the show notes. Thanks in advance for your support.